Justin Kuritzkes. Drew Starkey. Daniel Craig. And Luca Guadagnino. Wow, congratulations and thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll start with Luca. I mean, you alluded to this in the introduction. Obviously, a book that's important to you, that you've been thinking about for a while. If you can say a little bit more about when you first encountered it and when you started thinking about making a movie.
I was a very bizarre, lonely kid in my teens in Palermo, Sicily, which reminded me, now that I think about it, about the skies and the palms that we see in the movie and in the imagery of the book. And I was attending this, I was going to this bookshop where I could spend my time reading books without buying them. And there was this name, William Burroughs, which was so evocative to me, and this white, strange graphic cover of a book titled Diverso, which translates in diverse, different, which I kind of, it was like a call to me. It was like a mirror, because I always felt diverso, and so I bought that book instead of reading in the store, and immediately I was exposed to the incredible language of this amazing writer that I didn't know, and at the same time, the book revealed something about myself, which was the feeling that I always felt, and I kept feeling afterwards, of desire and connection to a very profound degree. And since then, which was probably 1988, I had really thought about making this film. And I even wrote a terrible script that I will one day share with Justin Kuritzkes of the movie when I was 20.
So, actually, let's bring Justin in then. At what point did you ask Justin to write it for you? I know the two of you worked together on your last film, Challengers. But that came about a little differently. I mean, this was something that you initiated and asked Justin to adapt.
Yeah, we were having great time in Boston shooting Challengers, and I really met my buddy with that movie. And I don't know. I mean, intuitively, I felt like I tried many times to get the rights to make the movie, and they were always unavailable. And then I called my protector and friends at Fremantle, who really boldly financed this movie, and I said, "Can you check if they might be available, these rights?" And they were available, and that is when I gave you the book. I gave you the book, or you bought the book?
You gifted me the book.
I gifted you the book.
We were on set, and Luca handed me the book and said, "Read this tonight and tell me if you will write it for me."
And he read it that night, and he said to me, "Yeah, I want to do it." And then basically we were might be end of May or beginning of June, and I think in July you gave me the script.
Yeah.
And then in August, Dana said, "Yes, I'm doing it." It's the miracles of cinema, or as the wonderful J.G. Ballard would say, the miracles of life.
You mentioned in the introduction that the book is unfinished, and also Burroughs maybe isn't the easiest writer to adapt. So I'm wondering if Justin and Luca, if you want to talk about certain decisions that you had to make, and it's quite different actually from. I think it's true to the spirit of the book, but there are also a lot of changes that you've made.
Yeah, well, it was a very kind of special way to write something. It was very different from the experience we had on Challengers, which was a script that I had written before I met Luca, and then we got to have this incredible collaboration on it. But Queer was a movie that we got to talk about for months before I put pen to paper. And so we were very in sync and very much speaking the same language in terms of how we wanted to honor the book and how we wanted to depart from it. And one of the obvious main ways we wanted to depart from it is that in the book they don't get the ayahuasca. They don't get the yahe. And we decided really early on, it was maybe one of the first real decisions that we made together about what this movie was going to be, that we wanted to know what would happen if they found it. And so if you think of the book as kind of opening a door and then quickly closing it, we said, well, what if we went through the door and saw what was on the other side? And that was the end of our movie. What would that be, and how would that affect the rest of the movie that was faithful to the book?
And I think the clue, we were looking for clues in the book to two things. One was we wanted the book to be to lead us into having a very to have the tone of Bowers, to have the humor of Bowers, and to have this picaresque form. But at the same time, we knew this was a love story. It was a really, real deep love story about two people that were not in sync more often than they were in sync. That wasn't a story about unrequited love. That wasn't a story about someone trying to convince somebody else to love him back. It was a story about what I think is the impossibility in the possibility, or the other way around, in the meeting with the other, which I think is something that I explored many times in my work. But at the same time, I never had the possibility to really see this as the real profound theme of a movie. And we found in the book so many beautiful leads that gave us comfort to go there, particularly in this part that was unfinished in the book. You know, like when he puts the foot on top of Lee, when Lee is in withdrawal in some place in Ecuador, when he's dreaming, when Allerton is dreaming, and he goes on top of the foot of Lee. That was for us like, yeah, that's what it is about. How they could express love when they are not in control of themselves, when the repression of the possibility of giving yourself to the other is not at work, you know?
So when you were both discussing the film, Justin and Luca, I'm just wondering, at what point were you already starting to think about actors? As you described it, it's a love story, which means, you know, I think the two leads are very important. And at what point were you thinking about Daniel?
Well, I had a conversation.
Go ahead. I've got nothing to say. I was just pulling a silly face. No, I mean, I don't know. When I got involved, I mean, it was a very simple decision for me to make anyway, because Luca was directing the movie and I wanted to work with Luca for such a long time.
And I was sure he was going to say no.
Why did you think that?
Because, you know, like, I think you have to be practical in life. Okay, you have this script, and you think, okay, yeah, I'm going to ask Daniel Craig to play this character, and he's going to say yes. And he's going to be the most divine partner, and very easy, and he's going to go for it. Yeah. And it was like that. But again, the miracles of life.
I mean, listen, it was just... scripts don't come around like this very often. Directors don't come around like this very often. When it comes, you've got to grab it and just... And it spoke to me... the script spoke to me in such a way that I knew that it was something that I could... I didn't know what the end result would be, but the journey was going to be something else. And that's really what appealed to me, to be, you know, working with such a wonderful person like Luca, who is just one of the most creative and exciting people to work with you could ever hope for, and then to have all of these people surround him and all of those things. I didn't know what the end result would be, but I knew that we could create something. And we said this to each other, that's right. We said, whatever we do, we must create something memorable and beautiful and make it about love. And that, to me, was, I mean...
A lot of people have described your part, Daniel, as this role as a bit of a departure, given what we know you for in recent years. But actually, I think there's a real kind of continuity with some of your early films. I'm thinking of Love Is the Devil or The Mother, and I think that there's a real continuity with the kind of work you're doing in those films, which are also sexually frank films. And this one, I wonder if you thought about that as well.
I don't really, I mean, I don't look at my career and go, oh, I must do this, and I must do this. I don't give it that kind of, but certainly the reason I wanted to get into cinema was because of movies like this. And when I started off, the British film industry was in not the greatest of places, and there was not much choice. But there were a bunch of really, really fabulous, interesting directors and artists around who were making movies. John Mabey being one of them, who asked me to go and do Love Is a Devil, which was, for me, was. I don't know if it was a turning point in my career. I don't look at it that way, but it was a turning point in the way I view the work I do, and so in a way, yes, this is a distant cousin of that, but it's something that I was doing a lot of in my earlier career, before I did anything.
Could you talk about casting Drew?
Sure. Well, you wanted to work with me for 20 years? 2? Don't make me sound like a creep, Drew, please. So one of our producers, executive producers, Peter Spears, we were in London presenting Bones and All that we presented here. And Peter showed me on his phone, he said to me, I'm casting for this movie, and I got this self-tape from this young actor you should take a look at. And I watched this thing that was for something else, which I don't know what was it, but I saw this arresting performance from this really arresting face, like wow. And I said, I need to meet this guy immediately. So I went to LA and we met, and then we had a couple of meetings. One was with Jonathan as well, my consigliere. And then he made some tapes, which were fantastic, and then I think we felt that he was Allerton from the get-go, but then we wait a little bit. And then one day, we were in Cinecittà where we shot the movie. The movie is all completely, we can talk about it later, but we shot it on stage. So we were there, and I was coming off after a long day of work, and I see this crowd of people with banners, and I thought, okay, Daniel's fans, and they start to scream like, Drew! I thought, what's going on here? I didn't know that he was a star from Outer Banks, honestly. But I knew that he was the star, a star playing Allerton. It was fantastic, yeah. It's phenomenal the way Drew embodied the body of a man from the 1950s. It's just crazy. Thank you again.
Drew, can you say a bit about, no, not that part, finding a way into this character who is, this object of obsessive love, fascination, but also quite mysterious and opaque in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think it started with just close collaboration and talks with Luca, and kind of diving into the world of Burroughs. I guess a process of osmosis in a way. It's so rare that you get an opportunity to have 4 or 5 months of prep for something. And I think at times it was just, I felt like I was doing nothing and I was just meditating on it. But I think that has a way of seeping into your soul and who you are, and that was invaluable. And then, you know, of course, you know, I couldn't do much more work until I was with, you know, this guy. Just because Allerton feels like he only reveals himself when he's a counterpart to Lee. And that felt like his truest form and what he was most afraid of. And so I think the real work kind of started day one. Oh, a couple months before when I met Daniel, but that's on those days and the day of is where we found those little magical things.
I wanted to bring Jonathan in as well. Luca and Jonathan, maybe you want to say a little bit about your working relationship and how you worked on this film.
Sisterhood. I don't know. We obviously watched on Challengers, which was completely different what you saw tonight.
You have to know that Jonathan runs like $1 billion company, and you tell him like, "Can you do the costume design of this movie?" And he's there putting the needles on the suit. It's fantastic, like so dedicated and so beautifully humble, and of course, so talented.
Thank you, Luca. Embarrassed now.
He got this "I told you" thing, you know, like this was incredible.
I don't know. Working with Luca is really natural. It's just like working with your best friend. We read each other's minds on different things, and I think this film was very different than Challenge because it became quite psychological, the whole process of it, because we were in Cinecittà working night and day on it. It's like I've never worked in cinema, so it was like being in cinema, you know. It was like everyone, it was like the craft of it and people running around making the set, you know, like everyone, it was like a team thing, and I think it was sort of it just flowed as you were. Everything that you needed from it was part of the family of everyone working together in Rome. And it was sort of, it was a very kind of instinctive process. And Luca loves clothing, which is really unusual, you know, I think, because he really understands the psychology of it. And when we first started, we met with Daniel in Brooklyn. I was petrified because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And it was really, and it was just really easy. It was like we said everything had to fit in a suitcase. We only had one thing of each. We never made duplicates. Everything was original. And we did a lot of washing, sometimes no washing. The underwear was original from the period. And I like this idea that in a weird way it was, when Luca has this amazing ability, I think everyone will say this, is that you chip in. I would always go, well, is this okay? And Luca was like, do you feel it's okay? And then you have to put in your best into it. And I always thought when I'm doing it, I always thought to myself, what would be the narrative in the costume? And I thought, well, I always had this idea that he would start off with a pristine white shirt, which for me was maybe like cocaine. And at the end, he is sort of like with heroin, this idea of color. So he goes from white to dark. And it was Luca who allows that, allows you to have the imagination within that part, if that makes sense. I think everyone. Massive team, big family in Rome, having lots of fun.
I wanted to ask you, maybe just say a few words about the rest of the cast. I mean, really happy that we have Daniel and Drew here, but it's a great ensemble, and I was wondering if you can talk about putting, I think Jason Schwartzman and Leslie Manville are barely recognizable in the film, which is also amazing. I mean, the idea was to create a cast that could be as eclectic and as surprising as the characters in the book. And Joe Guidry, for instance, had this feeling of being so humorous and so dry. And that my mind went straight to Jason, which I wanted to work with for a long time. I offered him the role of the chef in I Am Love. He said no, and I asked him like 5 times. No. I said, I'm too short for Tilda. And then Leslie, I love Leslie, and that was one of the departures from the book. We wanted Cotter to be a woman, not a man, because Copper in the book is very hostile to Lee and Allerton, and we felt like that was a sort of kind of like act that she does at the beginning of their meeting, and then eventually you realize that she actually is a sort of Virgilius. She is like the guide for both of them to find a way to be finally in sync. And you wanted someone full of humanity, and I felt always that Leslie Manville, has brought that kind of humanity to the character she played. Then the composition of the cast, we have wonderful comedian Drew George, who plays Dumais, a couple of filmmakers, and then we have 3 colleagues that I love dearly, and I have a great, I'm fan of all of them. One is here tonight, Ariel Schulman, and then we have Lisandro Alonso. Where is Ariel? Ariel, darling. Hello. Lisandro Alonso, who plays Leslie Manville's husband.
And then we have David Lowery, which I tried to cast him in Bones and All, and said like we couldn't, and came to do this one. He's
the first one with you to first day. And then we have also some artists, like great artists like
Mikhail Borek and Andra Ursuta plays 2 roles. Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately we do have to end. But I want to thank you all for this extraordinary film.
Thank you.